The sun was low over the alien jungle, casting orange light through tall, twisting trees. Jaren walked alone, his boots sinking slightly in the damp, soft ground. He was tired after a long day of mapping the unknown region. His canteen was almost empty, and his food rations were finished. All he wanted now was water, just a little stream. Then he heard it, rushing water, fast and wild. He followed the sound, pushing past thick vines and glowing plants. Soon he reached a wide river, dark and strong, flowing fast between mossy rocks. He leaned down, filled his bottle, and was about to drink when something caught his eye. A shape, small, thin, and moving weakly in the water. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. It wasn't debris, and it wasn't a fish. It was a girl. An alien girl, barely floating, her body turning slowly in the current. Without thinking, Jaren dropped his bag and jumped in. The water was cold and wild, pulling him downstream. He swam hard, fighting against the current. The girl's pale skin shimmered under the surface. She had strange lines glowing across her arms and face. Gills fluttered on her neck, but she wasn't breathing anymore. Jaren reached her, grabbed her arm, and kicked hard to bring her back to the bank. He dragged her out, coughing and soaked. She was light, too light, like she hadn't eaten in days. Her chest wasn't rising and her lips were blue. No, 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 Jaren whispered, pressing on her chest. He remembered old Earth training. Push, breathe, push again. He kept going, ignoring the burning in his arms. Finally, she gasped, a weak, broken sound. Her eyes fluttered open, bright violet with black pupils like ink. She stared at him, confused, then afraid. But instead of running, she whispered one word. Claimed. Jaren blinked, not understanding. Can you move? He asked gently. She tried to sit, but her arms trembled too much. Jaren looked round, hearing strange sounds in the trees, clicks, whispers, soft footsteps. He lifted her up carefully. We need to get away from the river, he said. He carried her through the jungle, her skin warm against his arms. She clung to him weakly, her head resting on his shoulder. Behind them, the river roared louder, as if calling her back. But Jaren didn't stop. He didn't see the glowing eyes watching from the branches, didn't see the signal stones lighting up under his footsteps, didn't know that by saving her, he had stepped into something ancient. By nightfall, he found a dry spot under a stone arch. He made a small fire using his emergency kit. The girl was wrapped in his jacket, eyes closed but breathing steady. Jaren looked at her, unsure of who she was or what kind of world he had just entered. He only knew one thing. She was alive because of him, and someone or something was going to care a lot about that. In the trees above, drums began to beat softly, like a heartbeat in the dark. The jungle listened, and so did the river. The human had made a choice, and the alien world was about to answer it. Jaren woke up at dawn, cold and stiff. The fire had gone out, and mist covered the trees like a thin blanket. The alien girl was still sleeping beside him, curled up and silent. Her breathing was soft but steady, her skin no longer pale. Strange light pulsed under the glowing lines on her arms like soft waves. He watched her for a moment, still trying to understand what had happened. He had saved her from the river, but now what? Was she a danger or just someone lost like him? Before he could decide, her eyes opened slowly. She sat up with a wince, her violet eyes wide as she looked around. Then she turned her gaze to Jaren. He offered her a sip of water, and after a pause, she accepted it. You saved me, she said quietly, her voice soft and strange. Her accent was heavy, her words slow, but clear enough. Yes, Jaren said, nodding. You almost drowned. She stared at him like he had done something impossible. You touched me, she whispered, almost like it was forbidden. You pulled me out, with hands. Jaren frowned, unsure. That's how rescue works. But she shook her head, gently placing her hand on his. In my clan, she said. To touch in the river. It means bond. He didn't understand right away, but her eyes filled with tears. You are now. Life binder, she said. My fate is tied to yours. Jaren blinked in confusion. Wait, what do you mean, fate? You saved my life in the sacred river, she explained. It is law, old law. My life belongs to you now. He stood up, shaking his head. No, I didn't save you for that. But the girl stood too, though weak, and bowed her head. My name is Levia, daughter of the Water Clan, she said. I will not leave you. Jaren sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. He wasn't ready to deal with alien traditions. He had just wanted to finish his research, maybe get back to the outpost. Now he had a girl calling him, her bonded guardian. "Look, Levia," he said carefully, "I don't own you, okay? You're free, you can go wherever you want." But Levia only looked at him with sad eyes. "If I go alone, my clan will think I broke the bond. They will call me false and cast me out. Or worse, they will take me to the river again." Jaren didn't like the sound of that at all. "What happens at the river?" he asked. She lowered her head, voice shaking. "Those who break the bond are returned to the waters." He understood the meaning without needing details. His stomach twisted. He had just saved her from drowning, and now, if he left her, she might drown again, by force this time. Suddenly, this world didn't feel peaceful anymore. "All right," he said slowly. "You stay with me, for now." Levia smiled, weak but warm. She sat down again, pulling the jacket tighter. "I will cook. I will watch the stars. I will serve," she said. Jaren shook his head. "Just stay alive." But deep in the trees, something shifted. An invisible watcher turned away. Leaves moved without wind, and a message was sent. The girl had bonded, the human had accepted, and now the clan would come. The jungle air turned heavy as the sun climbed higher. Jaren walked slowly beside Levia, unsure of where they were going. She moved with care, guiding him through the thick trees and glowing plants. Her bare feet made no sound on the soft ground. Jaren's boots crunched twigs, breaking the forest's quiet rhythm. Still, Levia stayed close, like a shadow tied to his steps. "Where are we heading?" he asked her, wiping sweat from his brow. "To the high stone," she answered. "It is safe there. The Watchers do not enter." "Watchers," Jaren echoed, but she said nothing more. They reached a large stone platform covered in moss and strange symbols. Vines hung like curtains from the branches above. Levia stopped, turned to face the trees, and then kneeled. Jaren stood beside her, confused. "What are we doing?" he asked quietly. "We wait," she said. "They already know." A silence fell, deep and strange. No birds chirped, no water rushed, not even the wind moved. Then the ground trembled, not like an earthquake, but like footsteps. Heavy, slow, deliberate. From the shadows, 3 tall figures appeared. They were warriors, clad in silver-green armor that shimmered like scales. Their faces were hidden behind smooth helmets, shaped like fish heads. Each one held a long staff that pulsed with pale light. Jaren took a step back, heart pounding, but Levia stood up slowly and faced them. "I have chosen," she said. "I was saved by this human, and I claim the bond." The warrior said nothing, but the air around them vibrated. Jaren felt it in his chest, like invisible voices echoing inside his ribcage. One of the warriors stepped forward, looking down at him. Then a glowing net shot from its staff and wrapped around Jaren's arms. "Hey, what are you doing?" he shouted, struggling. Levia turned quickly, eyes wide. "No," she cried. "He is not to be harmed. He is Lifebinder, the lead was." Ryer spoke at last, the voice low and deep. "He must face the council. Only they decide if the bond is true." "What council?" Jaren demanded, but the vines tightened around his wrists. Levia ran to him, her hands shaking as she reached for his arms. "I am sorry," she whispered. "They must test you, to accept you." Jaren breathed heavily, trapped but trying to stay calm. He looked into her eyes and saw the fear there, not for herself, but for him. The warriors turned, leading them deeper into the forest. Trees grew taller, their trunks glowing with soft lines of blue. The path curved downward and mist rolled around their feet. Strange birds flew above, their wings silent like paper. Jaren walked in silence, the vines still glowing around his wrists. Finally, they reached a great tree, larger than any Jaren had ever seen. Its roots formed an open dome like a natural temple. Inside were 7 elders, old and still, their skin lined with glowing patterns. They sat cross-legged on stones, their eyes shut but shining beneath the lids. Levia bowed deeply, and Jaren was forced to kneel beside her. One elder raised his hand, and the vines on Jaren's arms vanished. "You entered our sacred river," the elder said without opening his mouth. "You touched one of our own, and now her spirit is tied to yours." "I didn't mean to," Jaren began, but the elder silenced him with a gesture. Meaning does not break the law, the elder said. Only choice does. You have until the next full moon, another elder added, to accept the bond. If you refuse, the girl must return to the waters. Jaren looked at Levia, her face pale, her lips trembling, and for the first time he realized this was not about love or kindness. It was about ancient rules, old blood, and a world that didn't bend for humans. Jaren sat still beneath the ancient tree. The air inside the root temple was heavy and cold. 7 elders stared at him, their eyes glowing like faint stars. He felt small, like a child standing in front of giants. Even though they didn't move, their presence was powerful. Levia stayed close to him, kneeling low with her hands folded. You touched her in the sacred river, the elder repeated. This was not chance, this was fate. Jaren frowned. I only wanted to save her. She would have died. Exactly, the elder said. She did die in the eyes of our law. You brought her back, so now she belongs to you. The words chilled Jaren more than the forest air. This bond, the elder continued, is life and death. If you break it, her soul becomes unclean, her name lost. Jaren looked at Levia, who kept her head bowed. He didn't want to hurt her, but this wasn't right. She didn't choose this either, he said. It was a moment of panic. Your laws can't make us prisoners. The second elder opened her eyes, bright silver without pupils. Our laws protect, she said. They do not trap. If the bond is real, she added, then you will feel it too. It will grow inside you like a seed in soil. But if it doesn't, another elder spoke, you are free to walk away. But the girl, Jaren asked, voice tight, what happens to her? The third elder raised his hand. She will be returned to the river, he said. She will sleep beneath its waters, where no memory remains. Jaren's fists clenched. The thought of her drowning again twisted his chest. Levia looked up at him then, her eyes filled with fear. I do not want to die, she whispered. But I also do not want to trap you. Jaren breathed slowly, trying to calm the storm inside him. He had only tried to help someone in need. Now he was being asked to make a choice that felt impossible. I need time, he said. I don't know what this bond really means. You shall have until the next full moon, said the eldest voice. But be warned, another added. If you stay close, the bond will grow. If you leave, it may wither. Jaren nodded slowly. Then I will stay. The vines on the ground moved as if they were alive. They formed a glowing circle around Levia and Jaren, then faded back into the soil. The trial has begun, the elder said. You may leave the temple, but not the forest. If the bond is true, it will show itself in your actions. As they walked away from the sacred tree, Levia followed Jaren in silence. The jungle seemed different now, quieter but more alert, as if the world itself was watching him. Jaren kept thinking about what the elders said, not about duty or tradition, but about the bond. What if it wasn't magic but something deeper? That night, they made camp under a large stone ledge. Jaren sat near the fire, and Levia sat across from him. You should sleep, he said, but she shook her head. I want to be awake while I still can. Her voice was calm but full of sadness. Jaren stared at the flames, unsure what to say. Finally, he spoke. I won't let anything happen to you, not again. She looked at him with wide eyes. For the first time, hope returned to her face, and far off in the jungle, the drums began to beat again, slow and steady, like the river's own breath. The jungle air was thick with fog the next morning. Jaren sat on a mossy log, staring at the ashes of their campfire. His thoughts ran in circles, too loud to ignore. He had come to this planet as an explorer, a mapper of unknown lands. Now, somehow, he had become the center of an ancient alien law, and the fate of a girl's life was wrapped around his choice. Levia was quiet, sitting beside a glowing plant and softly humming. Her voice was light, like water moving through stones. She had said nothing about the elders, nothing about the bond. She only watched him with gentle eyes, never asking, never pressing, but that made it worse. Because Jaren could feel the weight of her silence. He stood up, pacing near the edge of the ledge. Why me? He muttered to himself. I didn't come here to save anyone. He remembered the fear in her eyes, the way her hands trembled when the elder spoke, But he also remembered Earth, his plans, his team, his own dreams. If he stayed, he would be bound forever. If he left, she would be taken by the river. Either way, he whispered, someone loses. Suddenly, there was movement in the trees. 3 new figures arrived, smaller than the elders but dressed in armor. They were river warriors, scouts of the clan. One of them stepped forward and bowed. "Human Jaren," she said, "you are to be tested further." Jaren raised an eyebrow. "What now?" "A walk of truth," the warrior replied. "You must walk the path of mist and show your spirit." Before he could answer, Leviah stood and stepped between them. "Let me walk with him," she said firmly, but the warrior shook her head. "This path must be walked alone." Leviah looked at Jaren, her voice soft. "It will be hard and full of voices. They will show your heart, not your words." Jaren took a deep breath. "Fine," he said. "I'll walk." The warriors led him to a narrow trail lined with glowing stones. Mist rose thick around him, swallowing the trees, the sky, and the light. As he stepped forward, the jungle disappeared, and the path became something else. Shifting, bending, unreal. He saw flashes. Earth's sky, his old crew, his little sister back home. He saw himself walking away from them all, choosing Leviah. Then he saw her crying alone, drowning again in the river. A voice spoke in his ear, deep and cold. "Will you give up everything for someone not your kind?" Then another voice, her voice, whispered, "I do not ask for chains, only for a place where I'm not thrown away." Jaren dropped to his knees, breathing hard. Tears stung his eyes, but he stood again. "I didn't ask for this," he said aloud, "but I can't walk away." The mist cleared, and the path returned. The warrior stood waiting at the edge, nodding silently. Jaren walked back, heart racing but calm. He looked at Leviah, and she was smiling, not because he passed a test, but because he came back. That night, the drums beat faster, and the wind shifted. The jungle seemed to lean in, listening to his breath. The bond was growing, not by law, not by pressure, but by choice, slow and strange, like a seed finding light. Jaren didn't know what he would choose in the end, but for now, he wasn't running, and sometimes that was the beginning of something real. The sky turned a deep violet as the twin moons rose above the trees. Soft music floated through the jungle like mist. Strange instruments made of bone and vine played gentle rhythms. Colored lights moved between the trees. Fireflies, glowing leaves, or maybe something more. Jaren stood at the edge of a wide circle made of smooth stone. He had never seen anything like this before. Leviah walked toward him, her dress glowing with thin threads of waterlight. The fabric shimmered like a river flowing around her body. Her hair had been braided with tiny shells and silver roots. When she smiled at him, it was shy, uncertain, and beautiful. "You look different," Jaren said, trying to find words. She tilted her head. "Tonight is the ceremony of tides." He looked around. Warriors and elders were gathered in silence. Children sat on high rocks watching with glowing eyes. "This is the night when the river accepts or rejects the bond," Leviah said. "If it flows through us both, the bond will be sealed." Jaren felt pressure in his chest, not from fear but from the weight of what tonight meant. "I still don't understand it all," he admitted, "but I'm here." She offered him her hand and he took it. The circle pulsed with soft light, and the drums began to beat, slow at first, then faster. Leviah moved with grace, her steps matching the rhythm. Jaren followed awkwardly, unsure of what he was doing. But as the beats grew louder, he stopped thinking. He just moved, with her, not beside her, but with her. The air shifted, warm wind rising from the ground like a breath. Vines curled up from the stone and wrapped lightly around their ankles, not to trap them, but to join them, like roots growing around 2 trees. Leviah's voice rose, singing words in her language, soft, high, almost like a whisper carried by the stars. Jaren didn't know the meaning, but it touched something inside him. As the final drum beat echoed, the wind stopped, the vines uncurled, and silence returned. The eldest elder stood and raised a hand. "The river has seen," he said, "and the bond flows clear." But before Jaren could breathe in relief, everything changed. A sharp howl cut through the jungle, then another, and another, deep and cruel. The trees shook as dark shadows poured into the gathering. They were taller, thinner, with sharp eyes and dark skin. Their weapons crackled with green sparks. The rival tribe had come. Chaos broke loose, warriors shouting, elders protecting the young. Leviah grabbed Jaren's hand and pulled him toward the inner stone. "They've come for me," she said, breathless. "Why?" he asked, ducking behind a pillar. "They don't believe in the bond. They want to claim me their way." One of the invaders stepped forward, laughing. "A human," he said. "This is who you choose." Jaren picked up a fallen staff and stood beside Leviah. "Back off," he said, his voice steady. The invader raised his blade. "Then fight, Lifebinder." Jaren knew he wasn't a warrior, but something inside him snapped awake. Not rage, not pride. It was protection. It was choice. He stepped forward, ready to defend the girl he had saved, the girl who trusted him when no one else had. As the dance turned to battle, the river itself seemed to roar, and in that moment Jaren understood. This wasn't about being trapped. It was about standing where no one else had stood, not because he had to, but because he chose to. Sparks flew through the night as the invaders charged the circle. Their weapons crackled with green lightning, cutting through vines and stone. The River Clan warriors met them with long spears that glowed blue. Screams and war cries echoed through the jungle canopy. Jaren stood at the center, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. Leviah stood beside him, her eyes fierce and full of fire. "This is not your fight," one of the elders shouted, but Jaren stepped forward, gripping the staff tighter. "It became my fight the moment I pulled her from that river," he said. The elder looked at him, then nodded slowly. "Then fight with the river," he said, "not against it." Jaren took a deep breath and ran into the chaos. He swung the staff at the nearest attacker, missing at first. The alien warrior laughed, but Jaren ducked under the second strike. He jammed the staff into the enemy's side, knocking him off balance. Another came at him from behind, but Leviah screamed a warning. He spun, catching the attacker's wrist with the edge of the weapon. The River Clan sang a battle hymn, deep and echoing. It wasn't just music, it was a call to the forest. Roots began to rise from the ground, grabbing the feet of enemies. Trees moved their branches like arms, shielding the young and the weak. Even the river surged harder, its waves crashing up the banks. Nature itself had joined the fight. Leviah moved with grace, calling the power of her bloodline. Water coiled around her arms, becoming blades and shields. She fought beside Jaren, never leaving his side. Together they moved like one, human instinct and alien magic. For the first time, Jaren didn't feel like a stranger in this world. He felt like he belonged. But then the enemy leader stepped into the light. He was twice the size of the others, his armor black and jagged. He raised a spear of green fire and pointed it at Leviah. "She is ours by blood," he shouted, "not by river lies." Jaren stepped between them, chest heaving. "She chose her path," he said, voice steady. The leader sneered, "Then die with her." He lunged, fast and brutal. Jaren blocked the first strike, but the second knocked him to the ground. The green fire burned his shoulder, searing pain through his body. Leviah screamed and ran to him, trying to shield him with her body, but the enemy grabbed her by the arm and pulled her away. She struggled, kicked, screamed, but he was stronger. Jaren coughed, trying to rise, but the pain held him down. He looked up, vision blurry. Then he saw the river behind the enemy. It was rising fast. A wave formed, high and silent, glowing with strange energy. And at the center of it stood a figure, tall, glowing, ancient. The river spirit called by the bond. The enemy froze as the wave crashed forward, but it did not destroy. It flowed around Jaren and Leviah like a wall. It lifted the enemy leader high, then slammed him into the trees. The battle stopped, silence spreading like a fog. Jaren collapsed, breath shallow. Leviah crawled to him, her hands glowing with healing light. "Stay," she whispered. "Please, just stay." The elders stepped forward, surrounding them. The river had chosen. The clan had seen. The battle was won, not just by strength, but by love, by choice, by bond. And Jaren, broken but alive, had proved he was more than a guest. He was riverkin now, whether he believed it or not. Jaren lay still under the broken tree. His skin was pale, his breath shallow and uneven. The wound on his shoulder still glowed faint green, the mark of enemy fire. Leviah pressed her hands against it, tears falling silently onto his chest. Around them, the River Clan gathered in quiet circles. The battle was over, but the cost was not yet paid. "His lifeline fades," said one of the elders, kneeling nearby. He gave too much of himself. Leviah didn't respond, her eyes locked on Jaren's face. He had fought for her, stood between her and death. Now he was slipping away, and she could feel the bond weakening. "I won't let him go," she whispered, voice trembling. Her fingers glowed brighter, tracing the lines of the river mark on his skin. "There is a way," the elder said slowly, "but it is dangerous." Leviah turned sharply. "What is it?" "The binding of blood," the elder replied. "It is a sacred act. It will heal him, but it will change you both forever." "I will do it," Leviah said, without pause. She reached for a small crystal vial tied around her neck. Inside it shimmered silver-blue liquid, her own lifeblood collected at birth. It was meant for one moment only, a ritual so old that even some elders feared it, but Leviah's hands didn't shake. Not anymore. She knelt beside Jaren, opened the vial. The blood inside swirled as if alive, drawn to him. She let a drop fall onto his chest, right above his heart. Then she whispered ancient words, soft and low. The drop of blood sank into his skin. A light burst from within, spreading across his body like threads of river light. Jaren's eyes flew open, gasping for air. He clutched his chest, blinking at the sky above. What happened?" he asked weakly. Leviah smiled through her tears. "I gave you part of me. You are alive." He sat up slowly, still dazed. He looked down at his chest. There was a glowing mark there now. Not like the ones from before. This one was different, more beautiful, more permanent. It pulsed with light and time with his heartbeat. The elders stepped forward and bowed. One of them spoke, "You have accepted more than the bond. You are now of the river, of the clan." "No longer an outsider," another added. "You are river kin in blood and spirit." Jaren looked at Leviah, unsure how to feel. He was human, yet something inside him now felt different. He could feel her presence without touching her. He could hear a whisper from the river in the back of his mind. Not words, just peace, flow, belonging. "Do you regret it?" he asked her softly. She shook her head. "No. You saved me," she said. "Now I've saved you." That is the river's way. As night fell again, the clan lit lanterns and placed them in the water. They floated slowly downstream, symbols of memory and renewal. Jaren stood beside Leviah, his hand in hers. The jungle no longer felt foreign to him. It felt like home, wild, strange, but full of meaning. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid. His blood had changed, his heart had opened, and as the river flowed beside him, he finally understood. He hadn't just rescued someone, he had become part of something greater than himself. A new story had begun, written in blood, in water, and in choice. Morning light filtered gently through the jungle leaves. The air was calm, filled with the soft rustle of vines and birdsong. Jaren sat beside the river, his feet in the cool water. His chest still ached, but the pain had changed. Now it pulsed with quiet warmth. Like the river itself lived inside him. He touched the mark over his heart and closed his eyes. Behind him, Leviah watched in silence. She had not spoken much since the binding, not because of fear, but respect. She knew what came next was not hers to force. The bond was sealed, but the final decision still belonged to Jaren. The elders gathered once more in the clearing, 7 figures wrapped in robes of bark and mist. One elder stepped forward, his voice low and firm. "The full moon rises tonight," he said. "The time has come. You must choose, human of the river, to remain among us forever, or walk away as you were." Jaren stood, his face unreadable. He looked to Leviah, and she met his eyes with a steady gaze. "I will not ask," she said gently. "I only hope." He thought of Earth, his ship, his old team, the promises he had made. He had dreams beyond this place, goals far beyond this planet. But he also thought of her, how she smiled through pain, how she gave everything to save him. Without hesitation, he remembered the feeling of the river wrapping around him, not just water, but welcome. He turned to the elders, speaking with clarity. "I came here to explore a world," he said, "but what I found was someone worth staying for. I didn't understand your laws, your ways, or your people. But now I see that bonds are not made by rules. They're made by choices. I choose to stay." A hush fell over the clearing as if the trees themselves were holding breath. Then the elders bowed together, and the river behind them surged with light. Levia's hands trembled as she stepped forward. "You mean it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jaren nodded and smiled. "I do." She reached for him, and their hands touched. In that moment, the river mark on both their chests glowed as one. The vines around the trees began to bloom with bright silver flowers. Birds sang, the wind turned warm, and even the ground seemed to hum. From high above, a cluster of younglings watched and clapped. The warriors struck their staffs in rhythm. The river clan began to sing a song of binding, a song not heard for generations. It was the song of one not born here, but chosen by the river itself. That night the full moon rose bright and golden. A great feast lit the jungle with firelight and laughter. Jaren sat beside Levia, food in hand, heart finally calm. Children came to him, asking questions, touching his arm with awe. To them, he was no longer a stranger. He was a story, a symbol, a life binder turned river-blooded. As Levia leaned her head on his shoulder, he looked up at the stars. He had once wanted to reach them. Now he wanted none of them more than this moment. And somewhere deep within, the river whispered again, not in words but in feeling. "You are home." Years passed like quiet rain over the jungle. The river flowed as it always had, strong, wide, and full of life. But now, when it whispered through the forest, it carried a name. Jaren, the human who stayed, the man who chose. He was no longer a visitor, no longer a question mark. He was part of the song, part of the earth beneath his feet. The river clan flourished in peace, their enemies silenced by nature's fury. Levia walked among her people with confidence now, no longer shy, no longer hiding behind fear. Her bond with Jaren had become more than sacred. It had become a symbol of change, of unity, of hope. Children followed Jaren wherever he went. They listened to his stories, wide-eyed and full of wonder. Stories about the stars, about Earth, about the life he once had. But his favorite stories were the ones about the river, the one that nearly took a life, but gave back so much more. He built new shelters, using both human tools and forest gifts. He trained young warriors to fight not with anger, but with purpose. He helped grow fields, repair bridges, and write the clan's history into stone. The elders often said, "He does not just live among us, he lives for us." Jaren never asked to lead, but they followed him anyway. One evening during a moon feast, the younglings performed a new song. It told the tale of the drowning girl and the strange man from the sky. It sang of vines that listened, of hearts that chose freely. Jaren sat quietly as the children sang, his hand in Levia's. He looked across the circle and saw his old self, a man afraid to belong. But that man was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone rooted. Levia whispered, "They sing your name now." Jaren smiled, "They sing our name." Far beyond the jungle, other humans sometimes visited the planet. Explorers, traders, scholars. They came with machines and questions. They always asked about them. A human who stayed, the clan would take them to the riverbank and point to the carvings in the rock. A man and a woman, hands joined, surrounded by vines and stars. Some called it myth, others wrote it down as truth. But the river didn't care what they believed. It remembered. One day, Jaren walked to the river alone. He stood on the same stone where he once pulled Levia from the water. The wind moved gently, carrying the scent of moss and rain. He closed his eyes and listened, no longer to voices, but to silence. Peaceful, steady, full of meaning, he whispered, "Thank you." Not to a god, not to a law, but to the choice he had made. He turned and walked back home, where Levia waited, where the fire was warm, and laughter filled the trees. Legends don't always wear crowns. Some carry vines around their wrists and river light in their eyes. Some are made not from power, but from mercy, from love, and from a single act of kindness that echoes across time. Jaren didn't plan to become a legend, but when the river called, he answered, not to conquer, not to claim, but to save someone, and let that choice save him back. And the river, ancient and eternal, never forgot his name.